Welcome to Smart Talk. I'm Anaya Falcon. With so many streaming service options out there, cable and conventional ways of consuming media is becoming less popular. According to Grandview Research, since the start of COVID-19, subscriptions and viewerships has increased across all major services like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, YouTube, and Disney+. The streaming industry is expected to be worth $330 billion by 2030. On the contrary, in 2021, it was reported that 67% have at least one paid TV subscription, compared to a staggering 85% of U.S. households that have at least one video streaming service. According to Forbes, movie ticket sales in the U.S. were down 80% in 2020. And with so many new streaming options, cord cutting has become more popular and the future of movie theaters has become uncertain. Joe Randazzo, audio-visual technical manager at Franklin and Marshall College, joins us on today's Smart Talk to discuss the direction of media consumption. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. So talk to me a little bit about the summer project that you were involved in this year.
Absolutely. Well, working at F&M, I do get summers off. And in this case, it was really more a project on how to keep my ever-increasing cable bill from looking like a second mortgage payment. But the problem was I didn't want to lose the services and shows and channels that we had become so accustomed to, especially during lockdown. So we made a list of all the channels that we absolutely needed to have. And of course, that included the premium channels that we paid for, but it also needed to include the must-have, basic channels, things like the Big Ten Network. BBC America was a big one. And you want the news channels, and you also want your local networks and regional sports. So that's something to keep in mind. And those aren't available in a, standalone streaming app like HBO Max or Showtime or on Amazon. So you need to bring in this other animal, which is live streaming TV. So what we did was we researched and we found that, although there are a few of these services like Hulu Plus and Direct TV, we landed on YouTube TV. So we added that to the list. So now you've got this $69 a month, charge for that. And then if you want it in 4K, you have to pay extra. There's always something extra to pay for. But once we had all that in order, we called up the cable company, took a deep breath and said, okay, all we want is your fastest internet and let's get rid of everything else. And we did. And so far, so good.
Have you been saving money since making that decision?
Honestly, it's almost a break-even sort of thing.
Interesting.
But you kind of sense which way the wind is blowing, because I'll tell you this, Xfinity, along with, when we did this, they sent us what they call their Flex box, which is their streaming box. So they see the writing on the wall and are, prepared to, jump into the fray with their own version of basically Roku. So we'll see. But really with those streaming boxes, it comes to what's available on each of those boxes. And that's the kicker. You got to check them out, because one box may not offer, the app that you absolutely can't live without. And you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, and it's so odd because I came across a study that said that a lot of people are becoming confused by how many options there are out there. And with there being so many options, some people are going to end up not choosing any of them at all. It's becoming kind of confusing for people, and a lot of the different streaming platforms offer different things. So some sports programs you can only get on a particular streaming service, and then a special movie might only go on Peacock. What kind of advice do you have to offer for people out there that are trying to be cost effective with so many different options?
Definitely do your research. Certainly, if somebody's been through it, ask them. If somebody is a media consumer, they're always going to be a media consumer. So as frustrating as it might become, or you just don't want to spend the time and effort, they'll still use it in some form. Unfortunately, they may not be making the most of what's out there, and that's where the knowledge and understanding really needs to come in. And when it doesn't, that's when you get services that are more than happy, for a small fee, of course, to package, a very general collection of channels and offer it as a live streaming service or a package in a live streaming service, which might be the option for some people. I'll tell you this though, when I get in front of the TV and I look at 60 different apps flying by, sometimes I just put on good old Pluto TV, which is a free service. It's a live streaming service of hundreds of program-specific channels that run content 24/7. And I just click on something like The Price is Right from 1983, on the Price is Right channel, and watch that, because who wouldn't want to, first of all? It's right there, and I don't have to think about it.
Yeah. Come on down. That's a great show. So in your opinion, what direction is media consumption going in? I mean, you can't be the only one out there that's choosing streaming services over cable.
Well, I think it all centers on what delivery system we as consumers most have in common, right? And the answer is clearly our phones. They're our quote unquote home base. Our phones can talk to our cars when we want to listen to the radio. Our phones can stream movies and live channels to our TVs. We can use them to manage our streaming apps, pay the bills, and even chat with customer service on the phones. They can do it all and fit into our pockets. And of course, we'll always have televisions and radios, but as smart as they might get, they're still a specific tool for a specific purpose. So wherever this takes us, it really is going to start in our back pockets.
Interesting. Do you think it's going to have an effect on our overall knowledge of what's going on in our world? I think when a lot of people go towards streaming services, they kind of are mostly consuming TV shows and movies. How do you think that will affect people in the real world with real issues?
That's definitely a great question and a real concern. I remember being a kid and coming to school the morning after a particular episode of Happy Days, we're all talking about how Fonzie escaped from the milk can, the big milk can escape episode. There were only, a handful of channels for us to watch, and we all watched the same things, and, all had the same things to talk about, and all kind of developed the same, world views, such as you can when you're in third grade. Now it's really dangerous. Now it's really scary. Now there's a real responsibility on broadcasters and streaming services to provide accurate coverage of what's going on in the world. And unfortunately, so many of, even the most benign seemingly services, pick up on what you're interested in and then just show you more of it.
Yeah.
I mean, my 14-year-old son, for some reason, watches, planes, military planes taking off for hours on end because it just shows him more of the same thing. I honestly don't know where we're heading with that. I think it can go in two really extreme directions, one really good and one really bad. And I think it's all our responsibility to not be passive when it comes to consuming those things. I think it's funny how, you'll be in something where there's clickbait and it looks so tempting, but if I click on that, I'm going to get 100 more stories, on that type of thing. And maybe I don't want to hear about, how a father got eaten by a bear in the woods protecting his kids or whatever, because I'm just going to get more stories like that. So I refrain. And maybe that's what we all have to do going forward, just exercise a little restraint in some of the more, the spectacle of what's being reported, and stick to the real meat of things.
According to New York Times, Walmart is actually coming out with a streaming service called Walmart Plus. Do you think that this will be a trend that other major companies will follow since they see that streaming services are what the world wants?
I could see that working up to a point for companies like Walmart, QVC, Target, Home Depot, places like that, especially if there's a celebrity spokesperson attached. But in the end, I would think that's just another way for these companies to advertise directly to their target audience. Um, will it be a major streaming player to be reckoned with? Unlikely, but stranger things have happened, and you know, broadcasting companies and streaming services have grown up in much more dubious environments. So I would not be surprised if something really took off out of that.
And Netflix actually plans to put restrictions on their subscriptions to ensure that they are bringing in more revenue as well. Streaming services have become more popular, and a lot more people have been kind of taking advantage of Netflix and trying to use one profile for a lot of different users. Do you think if Netflix puts these restrictions into place, it will affect their revenue in a bad way?
So you're saying that Netflix is cracking down on grandma?
Yeah, they are.
Well, I guess one of the side effects of all this cool new technology is that there's all sorts of cool new ways for these streaming services to ensure that their product is being used within the parameters that they want it to be used. Um, Netflix Netflix only allows an account to be used on a single home network. And depending on the platform that you're subscribed to, you can stream 1, 2, or 4 devices at the same time. So assuming you can spare one of those streams, giving grandma your ID and password won't work on her Roku or Apple TV or whatever, because that streaming box is connected to the Wi-Fi or Ethernet network she uses where she lives. Now, will that pressure grandma to take out a Netflix subscription of her own? In that case, probably not, because you were the one who set it up for her in the first place, probably because you told her she should have it. And at this point, the hassle is just too much. So you throw her hands up in the air, and she doesn't want to proceed. I first got into the industry by doing movie promotions, and I promise you that no one ever complained about getting to see a movie for free. And I promise you that Netflix is not going to go out of business if the odd account gets shared with grandma or some down and out brother-in-law who, just wants to watch movies for a few months while they get back on their feet. The positive word of mouth from that far outweighs any temporary loss that might be incurred.
Interesting. And you talked about your experience with movie theaters. Tell me a little bit more about that. I know you were in the process of buying the Marietta Theater.
Yes, I had worked at movie theaters for most of from my teens into my adult life. And there's that certain romanticism about that old theater, and this one actually had a pipe organ, and you have the old seats, and it's beautiful, beautiful. And so you think of those romantic notions of, I'm going to run it, and people are going to come, and it'll be great. What I came to learn after doing all the due diligence and having the place inspected and all these things, I came to learn that movie theaters aren't really in the business of showing movies.
Yeah.
They're in the business of selling overpriced soda and popcorn. And that works if you've got multiple screens turning over multiple movies, bringing in enough people who are buying enough concessions so that you cover the extensive and expensive costs of running a theater. And at the same time, hopefully turning a little bit of a profit at the same time as you can pay yourself. And I can tell you that an historic single screen theater or a theater with multiple small houses in it definitely has a place. And those theaters should be preserved, they should be patronized, they should be adored. But they're a lot of work with little or no financial reward for, especially for a single person, who's got a family counting on them. And it really became just a matter of practicality that there are more fun ways to throw away my money. I suppose is what I'm saying.
Man, that's just so disheartening. I mean, what is the future of movie theaters and cable?
There are definitely innovations being made. Unfortunately, most of them don't get out here or aren't out here yet. I'm speaking of things like 4DX, where it's basically a ride for 2.5 hours, where you sit in the chair and it shakes and it moves and it tilts back and it squirts rain in your face
Yes,
and you smell
that's a lot of fun.
car tires burning and all of those things. It's an experience, and obviously one you can't get in your home, hopefully, but at least not yet, right? But something that you would definitely go out and pay for. We don't have that out here yet for the most part. Then there's the idea of having a shared experience. And
Yeah.
so you go to the movies for that. But I'll tell you, I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, I buy into that to a certain extent, but every time I've been to the movies lately, I'm in a big old recliner, laying back. I can barely connect with my wife sitting next to me, much less, the rest of the house. You're sort of this isolated type pod situation
Especially
for the
with the
most
big
part.
chunky cup holder in the middle.
A big chunky cup holder in the middle. And you're trying not to think about the last, 50 people that laid, here where you are. So, with regard to that, I would imagine, and this might be the easy answer, but we're kind of going to get a divide between people going to the movies for that big spectacle. Um, Maybe you don't have to pay $100 to take, your family out to see Downton Abbey, the movie,
Yeah.
when you wait a few weeks and see it at home. But the next big Marvel free for all or Top Gun 2 or something like that, it's a treat, and you definitely should experience some of that spectacle on the big screen with the crazy sound and everything. On the other hand, streaming right now has some growing pains to work out, and that's all right because that's how evolution is. But cable, in laying down its life for the next generation of technology, it will have left us with this physical wired cable infrastructure. We're all connected to the cable company, and that infrastructure that's in place now, it's really necessary if we're going to provide each of our homes, all of the millions of households, if they're going to have access to high-speed internet. You need that infrastructure that we now have, and without it, there wouldn't be streaming. There just wouldn't. Not the way we know it. And, well, Anaya, cable TV was born just up the road a little ways by some very clever people. And the reason is because they wanted to be able to give everyone the opportunity to share in what was this awesome new audiovisual innovation, television, right? And it's that past. It's that past that allows us to, once again, share in this awesome new audiovisual innovation.
I mean, I even think about cable and how we get the opportunity to watch something live, you know?
Right.
And now with Netflix and Amazon Prime, we're watching things that are produced and edited and made to be cookie cutter. How does that affect us as human beings, and what kind of impact do you think that'll make on us?
It's really interesting, I think, how discerning we become with so much being offered to us. You can sit down in front of Netflix and within probably a few seconds decide if you want to watch something or not. You put it on and you know if you're going to like it or not. So we're all becoming really good 30-second movie critics. But at the same time, while we're watching everything under the sun and learning about all things we never knew we'd be exposed to, we are getting disconnected from the rest of the world. I always say as a joke, I just want to go outside and look at a leaf, because as much input is coming into my brain from what I'm listening to and what I'm watching, I can tell you I've never felt more disconnected from the outside world than I have, at this point in my life, where you just go out for a walk, ride a bike, just hang out all day outside, and without the interference, the noise of, these technologies. And I really think the answer isn't inside the box and behind the screen. It's really just with, putting your shoes on and going out the door, and really finding a balance between real life and what's being broadcast to you.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me, Joe. This conversation has been enlightening.
It was my pleasure. I'm gonna go home now, kick back and watch some TV. No, I'm gonna go play with my dogs.
Well, I'm right along with you. It's a guilty pleasure, but like you said, balance is important. We've been talking with Joe Randazzo, Audiovisual Technical Manager at Franklin and Marshall College. You're listening to Smart Talk on WITF, your home for NPR News and all things regional.